Hey everyone, in the last lesson we added our table view and prototype cells, and at the end I mentioned that we are going to take a little bit of a side adventure here while we talk about something called protocols and delegates, okay? So to teach this, we are going to create ourselves a little side project here so that we can illustrate it in depth, okay? So go ahead and create a new project, and I'm going to select single view app, and I'm going to say next, okay? I'm going to call this protocols and delegates. And I'm going to say next, and just go ahead and put this on the desktop. Now in this lesson, we're just going to go ahead and set up our UI that we are going to use to teach this concept. So let's jump into main.storyboard, and I'm going to go ahead and show you the end product. Okay, it's a very simple app. We only have two view controllers. So here we have a label at the top and a button, and it says login. So when we click it, it takes us to a second view controller with a text field up here at the top where you can enter in a username. So we're kind of creating a fake login flow, very, very basic. So you just put in your username, which I've put as Johnny B, and then I'm going to push done. And then you see that this has been populated with the name that you have entered here on the second view controller. Okay, put George, and I'm going to say done, and there it is. Okay, so that is the very simple app that we are going to build, but the concept is very important. Okay, so let's go ahead and build out the UI real quick. I'm going to go ahead and grab a label here from our object library. I'm going to drag that in. Let's go ahead and pin that. I'm going to say 40 from the top, and I'm just going to say add one constraint. And then I'm going to go ahead and click down here on the align tool, and I'm going to say horizontally in container and add one constraint, and that will make it so that it's always in the horizontally centered position. And then we're going to need a button down here at the bottom. So I'm going to say button. I'm going to drag in our button here. I'm going to double click on it to change the title to log in. Then I'm going to go ahead and pin it right here with our add new constraints. I'm going to pin it 20 from the bottom. I'm going to say add one constraint. Then I'm going to click on our align tool here, and we are going to constrain it to the horizontal center. Okay, I'm going to say add one constraint. There we go. Now everything is nicely constrained here. So let's go ahead and add our second view controller. So I'm going to click up here on our object library, search for view controller, and just drop that right in here. Now if you've forgotten, you can use pinch to zoom in and out on a touchpad, and you can also scroll around, okay? So what we need to do is make it so that when we click on this button, we segue or change screens over to this view controller. And a quick way of doing that is just by holding Control. I'm going to hold Control and click on the login button, and then drag over to here and let go. And then you'll see here it says Action Segue. So I'm going to pick the show, and that will create this little arrow here. And this right here, this is a segue, and we can see that over here in our document outline. You can see show segue to view controller. Okay, so now when we click on this button, we're going to segue to this view controller. But this view controller, remember that there are two parts to the view controller. You have the view, the user interface part right here, but then you also have the .swift file in here that actually controls the view. And right now we only have one view controller.swift file, so we're going to need another one. So I'm going to right click here and say new file, select a Cocoa Touch class, and we're going to subclass a UI view controller. So I'm going to name this login VC. I'm going to say next and create. And that opens up here. So I'm going to get rid of these comments. And also I'm going to move this up here under our first view controller, and I'm going to rename this to be something more descriptive to our app. So I'm going to double click on it, then right click, and we can refactor. Okay, so I'm going to refactor and rename this file. I'm going to change this to home VC, all right? And we use VC, short for view controller, okay? Okay, so we have our home VC and our login VC. Now let's go back into our storyboard. And remember that if you, for instance, if you check out our first view controller that was here when we opened up the project, and you come over here to the identity inspector, you'll see here that the class is set to the home VC, okay? So this is linking up what you see here, the view, the user interface. This is linking it up with the home vc.swift file, okay? So we need to do the same with our new view controller here. So I'm going to click right here on view controller. We're going to go to its identity inspector here, and we are going to set the class to login VC. So now this view right here is linked up with this login vc.swift file. So now let's go ahead and add in our two UI elements we need here, and one of those is a text field. So I'm going to drag that in. So let's go ahead and add some constraints for our text field here. I'm going to pin it 40 from the top and 20 from the left and 20 from the right. And you can use tab to swap between these right here, okay? I'm going to say add those three constraints. Very good. And then I'm going to go ahead and add another, I'm going to add a button down here to the bottom. And this is going to say done. So now let's go ahead and wire up our UI elements to their respective view controllers. So I'm going to hold Option and click on Home VC to open up the homevc.swift file in our assistant editor. Then to give us some more room here, I'm going to close the document outline here. And we're going to be working with the home VC here. So I'm going to make a couple of spaces here, and we are going to hook up the UI element in our storyboard for this view controller with its Swift file, so that here in code, we have a reference to these UI elements and can interact with them. Okay, so I'm going to hold control, click and drag over here, and we're going to give this outlet a name. I'm going to call this user name label, and I'm going to say connect. And then down here for the login button, we don't really need to do anything because we already set up that segue, so that's fine. So I'm going to hold Option and click on Login VC to open it in the assistant editor. And we're going to select our text field here, and I'm going to hold Control and drag to add an outlet for our text field. I'm going to call this username entry text, TXT, and that's our outlet for the text field. And then for our done button, we're going to need an IB action. So I'm going to control and drag and let go, and make sure you change this to make sure this is set as an action. And we're going to give this name done clicked. Okay, I'm going to say connect. Okay, so anytime that this button is clicked, whatever code you have in here will be executed. And what we want to do is we want to dismiss this view controller and go back to this one. Go from login VC to home VC. So to do that, it's really easy. All you got to do is start typing dismiss, and you'll see here this method dismisses the view controller that was presented modally by the view controller. So I'm going to say yes, that's the one we want. And we want it to be animated, true, and completion. This is a closure, which we'll cover later on, but it just means that once we have dismissed, do you need to do anything? But we don't, so I'm going to write nil. Okay, then I'm going to close our assistant editor, and that should work okay. I'm going to run this, and let's make sure it's working okay. I'm going to click on login. We should go to our login VC, and we are here. If I type something here and I press done, that's not actually going to do anything because we need our protocols and delegates for that, which we will cover in the next lesson. Hope you're ready for that, and I'll see you then.